The History of Mayonnaise, Episode 1, Hellmann's and the Origin of Mayonnaise. Now if I told you that the Titanic played a part in the success of Hellmann's mayonnaise, you'd wonder how on earth they could possibly be related. Richard Hellmann was born on the 22nd of June, 1876, in the town of Wetzlar, which is situated about 60 miles south of Berlin. His dad was Hermann Hellmann, who was a saddler, and his mum was Emma Palm Hellmann. Cook's Info states that Richard attended school until the age of 14, when he became an apprentice at a food market in Wetzlar, circa 1890. He worked there for 4 years till about 1894. Richard knew a girl in Germany called Margaret Vosberg, who'd reappear later in his life. Richard applied for a job at Cross & Blackwell in London, which he got. After working in London for a bit, he meets someone from San Francisco, who offered him a job there. He agreed and went to America. His journey to San Francisco was via New York. There he recognised the offices of Francis H. Leggett Co., and he decided to go in, and he met the Vice President, and the Vice President gave him a job. Now living in New York, Richard finds out that Margaret is already living in New York with her parents, who own a deli. They meet up, and things must have gone well, as they get married in 1904. The beginning of Hellmann's. The next year, in 1905, Richard opens his own deli on 490 Columbus Avenue, where he started selling small amounts of mayonnaise. At this time, he was 29 years old. In 1911, Richard wasn't doing well health-wise, so he left the majority of managing the business to Charles Eberhardt. In early 1912, Richard, Margaret and their daughter Margaret, creative, travelled to their hometown, Wetzlar in Germany. They also took a little holiday to Paris. Whilst there, Richard met Matt Martinez, his old colleague from Cross & Blackwell, who told him about his endeavours selling mayonnaise in bulk, which gave Richard ideas. Whilst the Hellmanns were in Europe, Eberhardt unfortunately passed away. Now on Hellmann's journey home to New York, he was recommended by a travel agent to travel on the Titanic. However, because of costs and time, Richard decided to travel on an earlier and smaller ship, which is very fortunate, as if he did travel on the Titanic, it would actually be an upsetting incident. Once back in New York, Richard takes back over the deli, starts experimenting with the mayonnaise recipe. From cooksinfo.com, on the 1st of September 1912, he began selling his newly repackaged mayonnaise. The label he decided on had 3 blue ribbons on it. A blue ribbon at the time, and still now, usually means first place winner at fairs and competitions. He offered 2 sizes, 3.5 ounce and 8.5 ounce, in screw-top jars with wide mouths on them rather than narrow necks or openings, like, Caesar salad dressing. Hellmann's opened their first factory in New York in 1915 and continued to expand from there. We will cover more of commercial Hellmann's in a future episode. Now you might be wondering how they made their mayo. Mayonnaise is quite a simple recipe. It is a concoction of egg yolks, mustard, plant oil, salt, sugar and lemon juice. Really? That creates our delicious mayonnaise? Which nutter came up with that? Well, I'll tell you who did, or at least who might have done, as the origin of mayo is argued by different sources. The chef of the French Duke de Richelieu, is accredited with inventing mayonnaise. The Duke was celebrating his victory in Mahon, Minorca, and his chef didn't have any dairy for the typical creamy sauce they would have had, so he substituted the dairy for a plant-based oil. The French argue that he was the inventor, whilst the Spanish argue that the locals of Minorca taught him the recipe. According to History Cooperative, some accounts even suggest that the French Navy, during the 7 Years' War, played a role in its widespread use, with the Duke of Richelieu's chef potentially being the inventor. The term mayonnaise itself is thought to be derived from an old French word, possibly related to the French word moyeu, meaning yolk, signifying its primary ingredient of raw egg yolks. However, it is also argued that mayonnaise is named after Mahon. I could not find any source that has any more proof than just a story, so believe what you will. Either way, mayonnaise was perfected, to some degree, by Marie-Antoine Carême, who is of course French, so unfortunately the credit for making of mayonnaise as we know it does go to the French. From MASH.com, according to Cupid Shop, French Marshal Duc de Richelieu ate an early version of mayonnaise in Minorca, Spain, in the mid-1700s and brought it home, calling it Mayonnaise after Mahon, the town where he consumed it. The Nibble elaborated on this story, saying a French chef developed mayonnaise for a victory feast, celebrating the Marshal's capture of Mahon. This creation, like so many in history, came by accident. The chef had no cream for making sauces, so they substituted olive oil. Mayonnaise as we know it today wasn't perfected until the early 1800s when Marie Antoine Carême, the world's first celebrity chef, blended the oil and egg yolk into an emulsion. And that is all we have for this episode. So if you were intrigued or interested in the discussed subject, subscribe to my channel, Naysmaster 9000, for future documentaries and content. Here are my sources.